this piece of legislation will provide a 6% set aside. The federal government has a 3% set aside. Many other states have moved forward to provide that 3% set aside to businesses owned by our service-disabled veterans. This piece of legislation will be the first in the nation. It's a landmark piece of legislation to double the federal set aside, but not only that, it's not aspirational in nature, but it provides an actual set aside for authorities in state contracting of 6%. And it should also be clear that this in no way competes with the minority and women-owned business program, which of course is very successful as well. I want to start by thanking Senator Skelos and our conference and my partners, Senator Adabo, who's here, and many senators that have already fought on this piece of legislation for many years, including Senator Larkin and others. This is literally decades in the making. To do the right thing for men and women who are real heroes. A lot of people watch TV and they watch these movies and they're entertained by the movies. And I know my nephews, they go to the movies and they see these superheroes. These are America's superheroes. And each and every one of you today voting yes and in support of this piece of legislation can be proud that you know that you've done God's work. And it's one thing to shake a veteran's hand and say thank you for your service, and it's another thing to mean it. I thank the governor for his leadership on this. This has been a heck of a fight. And sometimes Albany is considered to be the land that common sense forgot. And I know many of you that do good work, you realize in Albany how it can be tough to even get good common sense things done. And I thank the governor for helping us get this over the finish line and making this a real set aside and actually doubling that federal standard. I also want to thank some of our veterans, Eugene Prada, who chairs my Veterans Advisory Council, Big Ben Downing, Joseph Krulder, and I look forward to going trap shooting with Joe soon, Carolyn Hulse, Cal Quinn, Matt Kuski, Matt Tully, Bill Nelson, and many others. You know, when we think about the fact that less than 1% of the population serves in the United States military, and I always talk about my military service. I was a former Air Force officer, graduated from the Air Force Academy in 2001, and I tell the joke as many times as I can that the worst combat I ever saw was probably at a cocktail party in Washington, D.C. at 2 o'clock in the morning. I had a great job. I enjoyed my time in the military. I think about my friends who continue to serve to this day, but I was never on the tip of the spear. And I do not know if I ever would have made it out, or if I just would have been a ball of mush and a ball of tears when confronted with what these superheroes have been through. Now, we have 2 combat vets here, too, Senator Larkin and Senator Lee Zeldin, that are in this chamber right now. But the point is that we live in a country where many of us are disconnected from the reality of what it means to serve. And they don't only serve, but their families serve. And I know men and women that have deployed. First, I know female troops that deploy when their kids are 2 years old, 3 years old. Imagine leaving your child who's 3 years old for 6 months and how it tears apart her heart. I know men and women that have gone on deployments 8, 9 times. Try to keep a marriage together. Try to raise a family deploying 8 or 9 times. And fewer than 1% is serving, and even less are these combat troops that are on the tip of that spear. About 3 years ago, I met a man named Jerry Majetic. I wanted to read this to you. We all think that we have a bad day because politics can be tough. When you hear Jerry's story, you're going to say, give me back my problems. Jerry was deployed to Iraq in March of 2005, stationed south of Baghdad in support of the 184th. On October 18th, 2005, while traveling as the 27th vehicle in a 69-vehicle convoy as part of Operation Clean Sweep, he was hit by an IED. His vehicle had a bounty on it. The rear half of the vehicle disintegrated immediately, killing a member of the security detachment who was a friend and roommate of Jerry's, and the battalion information officer, also a good friend. If you saw a picture of this Humvee and took a look at, it was literally disintegrated, you wonder how anybody can make it out of this alive. The driver's door blew off, and he was ejected from the vehicle, receiving minor burns to his right arm and leg. The gunner was thrown about 50 feet into a nearby field from the explosion, shattering his right leg and suffering second and third-degree burns on his arm, leg, and lower back. The propane tank and the IED set the vehicle on fire, and Jerry was trapped inside, unable to escape because the door next to him had been welded closed. A Navy dog handler, an Air Force UAV pilot, and the captain leading the convoy somehow pulled him out. While his injuries were being treated, the battle fire continued for nearly 50 minutes. Because the flames on the vehicle were so hot, one of the M16 rounds inside of the vehicle cooked off, flying out to hit Jerry in the upper rear of his right leg. When it was finally safe for a medical helicopter to land, Jerry was shot by an AK-47 in the right upper portion of his right leg as he was being transported by stretcher to it. He remained in Baghdad for a day because his condition was so serious medics could not keep him stabilized. He was flown to Germany, where he stayed for 2 days. He was then flown back to Brooke Army Medical Center, Fort Sam Houston, on November 2nd. He had 35% total body surface 3-degree burns, 100% face, neck, and scalp 3-degree burns, causing the loss of all hair, both ears, most of his nose, and his vision was gone for 2 months, with the inability to close either eye for almost 3 months. His intestines were ruptured and stomach bruised, causing the loss of a third of his small intestines. I'm shaking, and I'm not going to read the rest of this. But to say to my colleagues, thank you, and to this governor, thank you. This is the single greatest thing, what we're passing today, that we can do for these heroes. This country does a very good job at getting young men and women to raise their right hand and be willing to fight and die for this country. We do a pretty poor job as a state and as a country of helping those veterans transition back into this civilian workplace. I told Jerry 3 years ago that I would be like a pit bull on a ham bone on this, and that we would get it done. And if it weren't for all of you, this governor, our leader, and everybody in this room, we wouldn't have gotten it done. We had a press conference 4 or 5 weeks ago where we had a young vet talking about his buddy who committed suicide. And I realized, I was told a couple days later, he was actually talking about my buddy, who I met at Valley Forge Military Academy. It's a small world. And when you're part of that 1%, it's an even smaller world. This is certainly about jobs. There's no doubt about that. And the good news is that vets hire vets. And this is about meaningful employment, connecting service-disabled veterans and their businesses to hundreds of millions of dollars in state contracting. But beyond just jobs, it's about ending the epidemic of veteran suicide, where we're losing dozens of vets that are committing suicide every day. And we're going to save those vets through meaningful employment. So to everybody, and especially the staff, Krista Gobins on my staff, Bob Farley and others that have done the hero's work at getting this done, thank you. And to each and every one of you, God bless. And this is a very good and special day, so thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ball.